is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by M.
Welcome
Prize
in,
Bank.
everybody, to another episode of One Royal Way. Jordan Foote here, joined by my good pals Joel Penfield, Josh Keiser, brought to you by Kansas City Strength and Conditioning, the premier, most qualified baseball development resource out there. We can't thank them enough for sponsoring today's show. We'll start with Josh. How's it going, man?
Fantastic. I came down from my natural high of the Royals making all the moves. So now I'm just kind of bored with it. So it kind of feels like this is what's going to be for the rest of the offseason, potentially. So if we've got our haul, then I'm into it. But Joel, how are you, man?
You know, I'm hanging in there. Wife and I have a new daughter at home, about a week old now, so I'm running on a lot of caffeine, very little sleep, but wouldn't trade it for the world, man.
Heck yeah. I don't have anything fun going on, really. I take that back. I'm going to Oklahoma City over the weekend. I'm going to see LeBron versus Chet. Please, both of them stay healthy. Chet, I'm worried because he's a twig. LeBron, I'm worried because he's, old. But hopefully that goes well.
She'll drop 35 and it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a fun time. First time down there. It'll be awesome. You guys had an awesome time on Friday, it was, right? Friday afternoon.
Yep.
Put together a really good show, recapped. The Royals were making moves, and we were like, we have to get something out. We have to get this going. I don't have too much beyond what you guys covered. It was like a nice, long show. I think they're making moves that have clear, either this guy has playoff experience, this guy has major league experience. They're going with, obviously with MLB free agency, it's a little bit different because those guys naturally hit free agency when they're older just because of how the contract structure is kind of lined up. But they got a little bit older. They got wiser, I think. And I think it was Lesky that brought it up. My big takeaway as well, the theme is like pushing those end of organization guys down, or even the Brady Singers of the world, moving the middle to the end to the outside. You're improving on the fringes. You're improving the meat of the team better. I just like what they have done so far. So that's really my big thought. We did neglect, I guess you could say, the two biggest parts of the entire offseason, obviously. The first one being the draft lottery, hands down the biggest Royals development that's happened in the past month or two. Fate got shafted. I'm gonna kick it to Joel. The Royals had
second year in a row.
Then 18% chance at the number one pick, and then the team with a 2% chance. The AL Central rival Cleveland Guardians get that. Joel, what do you think about the lottery? What do you think about the Royals getting shafted? I feel like I know the answer to the second.
What baseball god did we piss off to allow this to happen for the second year in a row? Where the Royals picked 8th last year, they picked 6th this year. Now, this is not a terrible draft. They're still going to be able to get someone decent at 6, but it's like there were about 3 guys that are like can't miss type dudes, and of course, the Royals are not going to be in that top. Can I put on a tinfoil hat for just a brief moment,
please?
Oh yes, please.
This like the way that the lottery ended with the top 2 picks feels very much like Rob Manfred in Major League Baseball messing with the ping pong balls to de-incentivize tanking and go, you guys want to suck for a while? Okay, cool. Nope, we're going to give it to Cleveland. Nope, we're going to give it to Cincinnati, who at least gave crap this year. I have no backing on that. It's just the vibe that I got. It's like, though the 2 teams at the top were actually pretty decent last year. Like, they weren't great, and the teams that were horrible are picking in the top 3. Mm-hmm. Just an interesting thought. That's all.
The sour grapes that I had in my mouth at the time most definitely brought that to mind immediately. It was like, these are 2 teams. They're going to do good things with those picks. And then it's just a little weird that they were not clearly taking. And I don't know if the Royals were clearly taking as much as.
No, I think they were just bad. But yeah, that's the implication when you were that bad for that long, is that you're just tanking.
Yeah. It is totally tinfoil hat, but it is legitimately the worst case scenario that they could have gotten there. Getting a quote-unquote lottery pick in that top 6, they got the worst one of them by having the second worst. I mean, this is broken. This is officially broken. I'm tired of it already. They need to at least tweak this stupid lottery, and then just to turn around, and the luxury tax threshold doesn't matter either. that could get navigated, and it doesn't matter either. So what are we doing here? The only thing that I've seen from this new CBA regarding small market teams and anti-tanking has only benefited the big markets.
The irony of the luxury tax workaround that the Dodgers did with Ohtani is if the Royals signed Ohtani for that contract and did it, they would have updated the CBA so fast. You would say, you can't do that.
Speaking of Sauer, Josh, you mentioned it. The Royals picked up Matt Sauer from the New York Yankees in the Rule 5 draft, the MLB portion. He turns 25 in January. I am 1 day older than Matt Sauer. That's a fun fact. Also makes me feel ancient right now. 2023 at AA, 3.42 ERA in 68 innings. I think he had 14 games and 13 of them were starts. So the profiles out there, most think he is a reliever and the stuff can play up with the fastball in a shorter span, which isn't uncommon. I think it's interesting, obviously, with the Rule 5 guys, they have to stay on the 26-man all year or else you offer it back to the other team, all that good stuff. Josh, what do you think about Matt Sauer? Do you think he has a long relief role? Do you think, what's his role in 2024? And then what do you think about the pick?
Seemed like the pick was pretty well regarded. It was not a guy on my radar, but I wasn't looking at pitchers that closely like I probably should have been. But it did look like his, I liked his K minus walk ratio. Can struggle to find the zone at times, but still was getting enough whiffs to be interesting down there in AA. Lives primarily off of like a finesse fastball and a slider. There's not an overpowering, not a very high V-low fastball, but does get whiffs somehow. And that was at the AA level. So it's going to obviously need to play up on the big league level, but they can hide him in that bullpen that is getting revamped. It is stacked with veterans now. So they can protect him in low leverage situations. If Jordan Lyles and all these other guys that are kind of fringe rotational guys can stay out of that long relief role, then maybe that's an option for Sauer. But at this point, you can stash him in that middle relief role. Let him try to develop a third pitch and see where that takes him in the starting rotation conversation, at least in the future.
Joel?
No, I like the move. It feels like a very kind of about as high floor as you can have in a Rule 5 type situation. A little bit of an older guy, dealt with some injuries. That's kind of why he was unprotected. But the fastball metrics are very good. He has a great slider. Guys, opponents hit a $150 off breaking ball last year. The fastball has 19 inches of induced vertical break, which means it holds its plane at the top of the zone. It's a higher spin pitch, which is good fastball shapes. We're starting to see that shift a little bit. The Royals are taking more chances on good fastball shapes. That's a welcome sign for pitching development moving forward. I think he's going to be solid in the bullpen. I bet they're probably just going to ease him in, try and stash him as much as they possibly can, and then work in a bigger role into 2025. But I think this is a great situation for the Royals to get. They get a guy that is fairly well regarded. People like the pick that don't cover the Royals. They thought this was a good guy for them to take. So I'm cool with it. I like it a lot.
In the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft, the Royals lost TJ Sikkema. He, hands down, I think is the most notable name out of that. Clay Dungan and Wander Arias. They picked up Joe Gray, a 23-year-old outfielder, Keelan Kilgore, a 27-year-old lefty, and then Ryan Fitzgerald, a 29-year-old shortstop who kind of, and I'm not trying to dunk on the player, but fits like the quad A profile, it seems a little bit, especially with the age. But Gray struggled a lot in AA this year. Kilgore, 5.2 ERA, like a 4.5 FIP in relief. He strikes out quite a few guys, but he has a walk issue as well. Then Fitzgerald, just, again, kind of that quad A guy. So not a lot in the minor league portion. That's kind of all I got. Joel, you got anything?
I don't have much on those guys. Usually in the minor league Rule 5, like those guys are left unprotected and able to be picked up for a reason. So it's good depth to have in a lot of these situations, and maybe they're able to find something with any of these guys, but don't have a ton of high ups. We're going to see any of these guys in the pros, but they're able to further their career. So credit to them.
I like the project that is Joe Gray. I think he does have some power and a solid speed, so a good athlete, but he still has a lot of swing and miss in his profile as well. A lot of it looked like profile sort of like Juan Carlos Negrete down there. So, but he can't play center field instead, like Negrete cannot. So A little bit different there, but it was kind of showing that they lost Sycamore and Dungan, and they immediately filled those roles with Kilgore and Fitzgerald. If those guys are potentially in AAA at that point, I think it's probably the plan, but immediately filled up those, organizational depth roles that they lost to Sycamore and Dungan, which I wanted those guys to work out for sure, but just not going to do it. But interesting thing about Ryan Fitzgerald, signed out of Indy Ball in 2018, so that's kind of a cool story. It kind of makes you want to root for him, but he was such a fan favorite in Boston's AAA team. He was known as the mayor of Worcester. So I kind of like the personality guy. If he is just a depth piece, that's fine, but it's at least the face of a Storm Chasers team that does have a pretty solid history of production at the plate. So it's at least something for Omaha to kind of, potentially market, but we'll see what it is as far as like big league impact goes.
Speaking of big league impact and moving on up to the bigger moves the Royals have made, we'll kind of put a bow on Michael Wacha and Hunter Renfroe. The Wacha signing was made official this week. Official, ink to paper, introduced, interviewed, all that good stuff. 2 years, $32 million, player option for 25. It's rumored that there's like incentives for innings pitched. And really, I think that's good because, listen, Michael Wacha threw 134 innings last year. They were good, 134. He's been around 130 the past 3 years, worth 5 wins on Fangraphs. My takeaway from that, he hasn't topped 150 innings in like 6 seasons. The Royals are going with a couple guys, and Seth Lugo too. They're lucky that they are building depth because you can't count on them to shove 180, 200. They're going to give you the 100th percentile outcome for those guys, probably like 160 innings apiece. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because they're going to be quality, I think. But I guess I'll kick it to Josh first. Do you have any qualms with the value? Any thoughts on the innings? Any of that stuff with Wacha?
Totally understand the concern there with the innings. Obviously, if he's going to be a free agent acquisition, you want them to be as safe as possible, which is what I kind of think Wacha is. When you kind of look at the class and the tier that the Royals are going to be dabbling in, you got Giolito, you got Flaherty, you got Stroman, who are all, they have plenty of concern in themselves, largely with injury with a lot of those guys. So you're never going to have a safe profile in the free agent tiers that the Royals are going to be dabbling in. So Michael Wacha is just Michael Wacha is just about as safe of a candidate as I think you can get. I like how he brings something a little bit different than two. He lives primarily off a really good changeup, which there's no starting pitchers in the Royals rotation that does that. So if you're able to, change up the look against teams in a series by throwing Wacha out there as your 1, 2, 3 hole guy, then that's a benefit too that hasn't really been touched yet, I don't think, on this point. But is there another guy in that rotation that could potentially try to learn a changeup from him?
Makes you wonder, maybe a guy that, I don't know. Joel, thoughts on Michael Wacha? We're talking in this chat over here on the side. His name is not Michael Waffle.
It is now on this podcast from now on.
Joel, a reasonable thought on Michael Wacha.
The guys from Royals Weekly, Marcus and Mike Mead, I think made a great point talking about the signings, especially with Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha. These guys are known commodities, so it's not like we're not betting on a ton of upside. There's not a ton of ceiling there, but it raises the floor significantly of this rotation, which has been the problem for the last few years. Royals have been really wanting these homegrown young guys to raise the ceiling for what and it just hasn't worked out. So getting these established veterans in here that we kind of know what they are, they know what they are at this point in their career, in their, mid to early 30s, I think it raises the floor significantly. So that's what I like the most about Michael Wacha. I understand the injury concern, but if he gives you 145 innings with a 3.5 ERA, I think you love that. And that's going to be a spot where maybe it gets a little tricky with that player option, but the Royals play well enough. Maybe he wants to stick around and try and make the playoffs in 25 if they start to feel like there's some momentum there.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves with either Renfroe or what Wacha had to say, because we'll kind of talk a little bit about that later. But Renfroe, 2 for 13, it's $5.5 million this year. Player option again, that was a big theme with the Royals giving out those player options like candy. kind of the cost of doing business, kind of giving the player obviously just an option literally to come back next year and test the free agent market. 2023 Hunter Renfroe, and again, we'll talk about this later on as well, different player than 2021 and 2022 Hunter Renfroe, defensively even a little bit different, offensively quite a bit different. Accumulated 4.5 for the first 2 seasons, barely, I think it was like 0.6 last year. So the value itself, they're banking on the bigger sample size, which I think is smart. He hasn't hit the age where he's hitting a wall. Stick him in the corner outfield, give you 25 home runs, even at Kauffman Stadium. Maybe that's a little bit closer to 20. This one is pretty far and wide just described as fine, and you can make fine signings. And when you have a need and you sign a fine player to a fine deal, that's okay. That's really all I have. Do either one of you guys love or hate that move?
I think it's fine. I don't have
me too.
It works. Like, it's the Royals wanted to get a more established dude in a corner outfield spot, and Hunter Renfroe was available, and they signed him to a deal that is not team or payroll crippling if he is net negative or just like an average player. Like, it's fine. But maybe there's a chance for a bounce back in a low key situation in Kansas City, and he's able to recoup some value and have a good year. We don't know, but if he's closer to what he was in 21-22, then the Royals got a steal at $13 million.
They could also flip them, right?
Yeah.
That
was kind of where I was going to go with that. Like, they wanted something. They knew they needed a corner outfield right-handed power bat. And when you look at the market, you could look at Lourdes Gurriel. You could look at, Tommy Pham to a certain extent. Gurriel just got, 3 years, $42 million. So he is making in one season this year more than what you're paying Renfroe for 2 years. So if this is the market for what you knew you needed, and you can actually take a shot on a guy that could rebound into potentially something, 2-3 WAR player, then I say giddy up. And if it's a potential, you can flip him if he does turn into something, then even better. So I'm from the peripherals, you might look at his numbers last year and be like, I'm not really that impressed with this. But if you kind of look at the market, understand why they were going after this guy, and then also see that there's some upside to it, I think you can really start to look into it as a positive.
Absolutely. We're going to look into more stuff on One Royal Way right after this break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Welcome back in One Royal Way podcast. Jordan Foote here, Josh Keiser, Joel Penfield, the guys hanging out, talking some ball. We have a lot to cover left in this show, guys. So we have been doing good on time, but we're going to have to be efficient. Granted, some of these moves are kind of self-explanatory or don't have too much. Like Dylan Coleman to Houston for Carlos Mateo. Carlos Mateo, I would call either one of you guys out if you said you were an expert on Carlos Mateo, because no one knows anything about him. He's a lottery ticket for a player that, Joel, was he working at Shred this offseason?
Coleman was. I don't know about Mateo.
So people, Coleman. I'd be surprised.
Coleman, I was like,
Mateo was down there.
Coleman. There was a lot of guys from the Royals, or now former Royals, I guess, that are working at Shred. So, I guess this is basically the Royals going, it's just not going to work, or it's a situation where they're just like, maybe it's just a change of scenery that he needed after a really, really rough 2023.
So I agree. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's kind of a bummer to see Dylan Coleman go. Seemed like a good dude too. So it is definitely a bummer to see him, but I look forward to Carlos Mateo's majesty on his majestic ride to the top.
And something the Royals are getting better at with JJ Piccolo at the helm, really the next 3 or 4, maybe even 5 guys that we're going to talk about real quick, knowing when it's time to get rid of the player and move on, knowing when, okay, we're not going to hold on to hope and say, well, what if Ryan O'Hearn figures this out? Or, what if a Taylor Clark or Dylan Coleman figures it out? Sometimes it just does take a change of scenery and a new set of circumstances. And the Royals are getting lottery tickets back, even for some guys that you may not think are netting anything on the market. And maybe a John Heasley, something like that. If the Royals can get anything out of these players, they're getting it. more than what they were getting from the player itself. So I think that is intelligent. Taylor Clark to the Milwaukee Brewers for Cam Devaney. Clark, it just didn't really work. And he started off last year kind of hot, then fizzled out. The FIP versus ERA was always a little bit weird, so people were clinging to hope that he would figure it out. The return kind of, someone comped it to like a Devin Mann type player, and he experience all around the infield besides catcher. He's played shortstop, he's played first base, he's played third base. He can capably handle all that. I was looking ahead here. 107 weighted runs created plus, about a 12% walk rate. The strikeouts aren't out of control. You're getting positional versatility. You're getting an okay prospect hitting wise, kind of I guess you could throw Nick Lofton comp in there. I don't think this is really a crazy return in terms of what he can do. You're getting another guy that if you need someone to spell, let's say Michael Garcia or Bobby Witt Jr. or something like that, God forbid someone gets hurt, then I think this trade would kind of reap some value. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the Devin Mann comps too much. He's got a little bit of pop, but I think Mann was a lot of like approach and then a little bit of pop with position versatility because he just doesn't play anything super well. So, and it's kind of what it seems like with Devaney, especially. I like his size, potentially maybe a little bit more for third base, but he didn't spend a lot of time there. So if he profiles more as an approach first with a little bit of pop at the plate, third baseman, then I'm a little bit intrigued. I don't think he's going to be sticking up the middle a little bit, but I don't know him that well, so it's just purely a mile-high look at it. But Ryan Brady's also interesting. He makes his hay off a sweeper-slider combo.
Yeah.
No matter where he's pitching out of is going to be providing a different look. So I don't know. His numbers aren't great either, but he's at least going to give you a little bit of a change-up in that bullpen, wherever that bullpen is.
Joel?
Yeah, the positional versatility Devaney provides, I think, is fine. It's good work depth. I'm a little bit higher on Ryan Brady, 72 strikeouts and 77 innings, only 19 walks, had a sub 2.7 ERA between high A and double. He's a little older at 24, but he's a BYU guy, so it's not like it's so he was a little older because like the Mormon mission and all that kind of stuff that he had to go do before college. So it's not like this is a truly like older prospect in terms of why he's in double A at 24. Something kind of interesting there. I think he has got I think there's more upside there than there is with Devaney, but you got something for Taylor Clark. I kind of look at this similar to the Royals and what they did with Jose Cuas, that like you got something for him. Cool. And then we move on.
The guy.
Money too.
Yes, exactly. The guy the Royals, I don't want to say we knew it was going to happen. Like we weren't tipped off or anything. It was the lowest hanging fruit. It was a bingo free space. It's nothing against the player. Edward Olivares got traded. And the Royals were going to part ways with him one way or another. He was always the odd man out. Like it just wasn't working. Davies Nadal is coming back over a 21-year-old shortstop in A-ball, 15% walk rate, 33% K rate. So again, kind of hard to get. You're like, okay, there's something there. 212 batting average. The OBP was like 34%. It was a crazy disparity for a player with Renfroe. Even without Renfroe in the fold, still logjam there. You're making a 1-for-1 swap potential upgrade. We will talk about that later. Joel, do you have any final thoughts on the era there, or the return?
This felt like the obvious move for the Royals. There was a logjam in the outfield. The second they signed Renfroe, I think we all like, okay, where's Olivares going? Like, is it going to be a, thank you for your services DFA, or are they going to make a move? They made a move within a couple of hours after the Hunter Renfroe deal was announced. So felt like the obvious move. He's going to go and get pretty close to everyday at bats probably in Pittsburgh, and I wouldn't be shocked if he has a decent year. But it just felt like the obvious move. There are just better options there now than Edward Olivares.
I look forward to seeing him blossom into the great player that he is in Pittsburgh. I'm excited to see Davis Nadal just take pitches. Just take them. Just take. That approach is locked in with that K and walk ratio. Yeah. That was the first thing I noticed, and I put it on Twitter, and shout out to my brother Brian. But he was like, is the swing percent like 2? And that made me laugh.
Was it Duval that nicknamed Lofton, or not Lofton, Prado Nick? I ain't swinging at that shit.
I know.
It's
No.
like I'm just gonna take. Moving further along the Edward Olivares Memorial Highway, that everyone knows which one I'm talking about. John Heasley, the guy that has spent some time over the past year or so on that highway, sent to Baltimore for Cesar Espinal. It just didn't work for Heasley again. And I hate to say that with all these guys, but literally that's just what it is with some of them. It just wasn't working out. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And when Heasley first came up, there was talks about, okay, he's going to give up some home runs, but he can live with that. He doesn't have any premier plus stuff, but everything is well-rounded. He can be an okay starter. He can give you some length. He can limit walks, and it just never clicked totally. The Pokes do stay hot, Joel, so I think that there are high hopes for him, but how will you remember the Johnny Heasley era in Kansas City?
It stinks that it didn't work out. I know there was some injury stuff with him as well. Just felt like they just couldn't quite figure out the pitch mix and the way to kind of maximize his stuff here. I think Baltimore might be able to do that. So I'll be interested to see how he gets utilized there, or if he's just kind of a quad A guy that bounces back and forth. That might be the way his career goes, but in the right situation, I still think there's a good, a decent, viable big league pitcher in there. It just wasn't going to work out in Kansas City. This is another move I think we've seen with all four of these moves and some other ones we're going to talk about here shortly. This is JJ kind of trimming the fat and going, hey, this isn't a tenable situation here for any of these guys. We need to get more known commodities in here that can help us win ball games right now. Clearly, the evaluation process last year kind of is coming to fruition with these moves that are being made, both the free agent moves that the guys they brought in and who's getting shipped out as the corresponding.
And the big need was always starting pitching. And
Sure.
the fat was going to be trimmed in the bullpen. That was always going to be the case. So these guys finding themselves on the fringe, landing in different spots, hopefully getting another shot to, put it all together. Heasley's definitely a guy you root for 100%. Going to Tread as well. And, he had metrics to do something with. Baltimore can absolutely do something with those metrics. So it'd be cool to see him get it figured out. I'm excited to see this Cesar Espinal again, a rookie ball guy. Not much known about him. It has got good size at 6'2", 165, but it's all pretty much all I got on that. His ascension as well.
Exactly. A couple guys the Royals were unable to get anything for, but just they had a lot of roster math they needed to calculate and make corresponding moves for their new additions. Max Castillo, was he part of the Whit Merrifield trade? Am I remembering that right?
It's him and Taylor.
Okay.
He's going to clear waivers and be back. I'd be shocked if he gets picked up.
I think so as well. 5.43 ERA in just under 60 innings with the Royals organization, or sorry, the big league team so far. Colin Snyder did get picked up though by the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I believe it was Preston Farr. Does that sound right? That thought there's reasons these guys get picked up, and Snyder did kind of flash a little bit. I think
he's been
Snyder,
like a metrics darling.
Yes.
It's wild.
But it's just the stuff and the results don't match up with him at all. And I don't know if that is just the way he's always going to be, or if someone's be able to tap into it. So I'll be fascinated to see how he gets used in Arizona if they're able to.
I was exactly the same thought, Josh.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I was just kind of looking up to see exactly what went wrong. It looked like he did lose command of the strike zone, but also, he wasn't striking guys out when he was getting MLB innings. So, what was his super low? It was like 11.6% K rate at the MLB level, 13.4% K rate at the MLB level with an 11.4% walk rate. Ain't gonna do it. It doesn't, not just, you can have all the metrics you want, but if you can't find the strike zone or make people miss, then it's going to be a problem. So hopefully Arizona, again, Colin Snyder, good dude, also at Tread. And I was kind of looking forward to seeing what he could possibly be, but we'll see what he does in Arizona and go from there.
Joel?
So one thing, I just looked this up as we were talking, because there was a lot of these moves were guys that were in the bullpen last year, obviously with Castillo, Heasley, Coleman, Clark, Max Castillo, Colin Snyder, all gone now. Here is what Fangraphs has as the projected bullpen right now. Obviously, there's going to be some more moves that take place, and this isn't going to be the what's trotted out on opening day, but just interesting to look at compared to last year. here is the projected bullpen: James MacArthur, Will Smith, John McMillan, Nick Anderson, Chris Stratton, Carlos Hernandez, Steven Cruz, Matt Sauer. And then you have in AAA, or at least, other guys right now: Daniel Lynch, John Bolin, Anthony Veneziano, Alec Marsh, Angel Zerpa, Chandler Champlain. That is a hell of a lot more viable than what we were working with last season. And again, it's kind of like they did a great job of raising the floor of the bullpen. There are guys with some ceiling, like MacArthur, McMillan. I still think there's still something Carlos Hernandez can tap into, but this is I will not feel near as sketched out when the Royals have to go to the bullpen in a 7-1 game in the 7th inning, that we're not going to need to be sweating this game out. At least that's how I feel right now. So massive credit for essentially like an overhaul. Like there is very few guys from last season that are in this bullpen. So it says a lot about how they were able to, or how they viewed some of those guys and what they were able to do for them.
Still room to bring Aroldis Chapman back.
True that.
I wouldn't hate it. I really wouldn't. And if they flip him again and get another Cole Reagan,
sure.
Dope.
Run it
Well,
back.
and that's the thing with these player options and the guys they're bringing in. They're, I guess you could say, marquee names like Will Smith. People who know ball and follow ball know who Chris Stratton and Will Smith are. It's weird to see the Royals like associated with that level of player, even though they're not some dominant reliever or whatever. Teams are going to be snooping around at the deadline. If the Royals are quote unquote out of it, or even like not seriously wanting to make a playoff push, or like if you injected front office member X with truth serum and said, hey, were you at least kind of considering moving these guys at the deadline? Like, he's just thinking and trade, a couple $1 million in exchange for a prospect at the deadline. They'd probably be like, yeah, a little bit. So it's good process. If you have the money, spend the money, which they're finally doing, and then some. It works, I think.
If you had to call your shot right now, say it's opening day, the Royals are up 4-2, top 9. Who's coming out of the
Will Smith
game? Will Smith.
Smith.
Do we think it's that simple?
Right now.
I don't think it's that simple. I think it's going to be 100% matchup based, like Q was saying.
I think they start off with Will Smith. I don't know if
I might call my shot on James MacArthur.
Yeah.
We could see that.
He looked comfy in that role at the end of the year.
Sure did.
So, and for a guy with very little service time, I think there's something. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage it. But
something about a guy that has nothing to lose makes him so dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah. They have, let's see here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have like 5 guys with closing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's insurance policies. And like, that's weird to say for a team that isn't going to be good. Now they can be competitive. We're going to do some math with that here in a while. But they have insurance policies in case things do go wrong. Like last year, or maybe it was the year before, Taylor Clark got hurt. And people are like, oh my God, Taylor Clark, like that's actually a notable loss for the Royals bullpen. What are they going to do? Like this year, if, Sauer gets hurt or whatever, not to just pick on him, people are going to be like, okay, well, next man up, whatever. They have not just insurance at the big league level. They can bring up player X and have them hopefully produce comparable value from their standpoint. So speaking of insurance policies, and I don't know why I keep setting myself up with these transit like that. I know, just speaking of, it's the go-to. I watch too much Kent Swanson on the case.
That's right. Ken Swanson's School of Transitioning.
Yes, exactly. Chris Bubich avoided arbitration for 2024 was $2.35 million. The MLB trade rumors estimate was 2.4. So pretty much on track with that. He is tracking to be back by mid-season. JJ Piccolo said, now the difference in being back and ramping up versus like you're on the mound, no restrictions, all that stuff is a little bit iffy, but that'd be 12 months mid-season, 13 months. Like it was pretty early in the year. That
it was like early May, I think, when he got clipped. So
that sounds
it'd be like
right.
13, 14 months.
Yeah. Wouldn't be bad.
No.
Good sense.
I'm just curious what he has left after that. If he was able to tweak a couple of things, once he gets back on a mound and figures something out. It looked like he had figured something out last season. So hopefully if he's able to reclaim much of that, then it's another option. We'll be curious to see how he gets used.
Too like they're not. They went out and got a couple guys where they don't have to.
So they're not having to
please be healthy. Like please give us this. They don't.
We're not having to rely on post TJ Chris Bubich to help you out immediately after.
Yeah, which I think that is the largest impact of these pitching acquisitions that they made. Especially in the rotation, being able to push guys like Lynch, Bubich, Marsh, Veneziano, let them go down to AAA, see what they can learn down there, try to fix as much as you can and polish as much as you can. So if and when they are needed, they are ready to go and hit the ground running, as opposed to being pressured to be able to carry weight and need them to have 5 or 6 quality innings every time they go out there. That's not necessarily the case with guys that are known commodities like Waffle and Lugo and Reagan's at this point. So that's potentially the biggest change and impact that I saw from these free agent acquisitions and why I love them so much.
The Royals did spend some money and their players are getting awarded a little bit more. Bobby Witt Jr., Michael Garcia, Cole Reagan's based on the WAR formula to determine compensation for pre-arb players. They earned like a combined $1.5 million. It isn't a big deal. Money's added on top of their base salaries for 24, keeps them happy, gives them a little bit of a reward. Nothing really to expand on that. I don't think. I just wanted to bring it up. Oh, Josh, you actually do have something to expand on it. Okay.
You mean to tell me that a rule in the CBA is once again going to go against their Kansas City Royals? That is shocking. That is shocking. Not that they don't deserve. Obviously, they deserve that money. I just wanted to, add another dagger into this horseshit system that we're currently under.
And $1.5 million all of a sudden for the Royals is chump change. They're like, oh yeah, then we shit that out in the morning, like whatever, it's no big deal. I almost said,
"Oh, you did it! You're gonna."
No, but I've got to break that habit, man. Working on it, and there was no transition for that whatsoever. The stadium thing is continuously. We're gonna start a couple games here. I guess games might not be the word, but fun stuff that were ideas. Actually, both of these I think were Josh's. So shout out to him. Is it enough? And that's going to be the question. Is it enough to do X, Y, Z? Is what the Royals have done / will be doing over the next couple months. This one kind of time specific, I suppose, enough to get people to vote yes and support the stadium happenings that are going on. Joel, what do you think?
It might be. I think none of these moves are like, holy crap, they're making all of these, crazy moves like the 2012 Marlins or the 2016 Padres. Like, it's nothing groundbreaking. No pun intended, I guess. But I think it's enough to where it's like, hey, there's some give a shit here. Like, they're trying to make this roster better to win. They're not just like bottoming out to do whatever, kind of like what Oakland / Vegas has been doing the last few years. Like, it's not like to that level. I think there is some legitimate care in here of like, we can't keep messing around. We cannot keep, trying to live within the margins and do it all from within. Well, they got to go out and spend money, and they did. And I think they deserve some credit for that.
100%. I think it definitely helps. I agree. It's not the knockout punch that there is going to need to be able to pull all that fan support together. They spent $47 million going into this year's roster. And was it 107 total? Is that what
I think it's 105 okay. Total payroll over the life of the contract.
Triple digits.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's fifth in baseball. Obviously, number one is insane compared to the other four, but it's number 5 in all of baseball in total committed payroll this offseason.
And you know what? At least for us, the fans that are usually plugged in online, there's buzz around this team. And it's not just local. We're going to talk about it in just a second. It's national, too, now. They're one of the most active teams in the winter at this point. To this point, they're like lapping the field as far as transactions go. So it's cool to see them getting the buzz. So at this point, it makes sense that they're, getting plenty of notoriety that they could potentially need. But the knockout punch, you really want to get that yes vote. that Bobby Witt Jr. extension could be absolutely the one that does it. That's the one. That's how you get yes. So if you're able to extend Bobby Witt Jr., that's going to be the big one. That's going to be this offseason is going to get you a yes on that ballot. It's pretty much among the fans entirely, I think. It's going to be another thing to convince the regular voters that don't, follow baseball at that point. But it's definitely a start. They could do better, and they can afford to. I think it's only like $100 to $110 million over the next 3 seasons, and then $70 million after that. There's going to be plenty of needs, but you can afford that Bobby Witt Jr. extension, at least in the short term and probably in the long term too.
There have been talks about a 0.3% sales tax being instituted. Jackson County talking about doing that. The deadline for getting the proposal on the ballot in the spring is January 23rd. There was not a resolution at the meeting this week, reportedly. So still more things there, plenty of more speculation to come. And this particular thing, we're going to be speculating about it for months and months until spring training, until the beginning of the season. Really, probably the first month of the season, maybe even the first couple. Is this enough for the Royals to win the American League Central in 2024? I did some math, and my answer is no. I'm just going to be honest straight up there. I'm just going to cut to the chase. The Pythagorean win record or win total was 64 last season. They won 56. I think they were like a 60-win team, and you can say you are what your record says you are, whatever you want to do. The average lineup, they were about 8 wins below. The average rotation, they were like 4 or 5 wins below. This is Fangraphs data. The bullpen was like almost just 0. It was just there. It was bad. If they add, let's say, 3 wins to the lineup from guys getting better, they add 1 from Renfroe, they add 1 with less dead weight. In the rotation, you get a couple from Lugo. He was worth almost 3. You get a couple from Waka. He was worth like 2.5. You get another one from Cole Reagans. You get another one from Growth. Like, they're somewhat conservative estimates, but I found about 14 more wins. And it's not absolute best case scenario. It was like, if this goes as I expect it to, not considering negative contributors, which again, they're going to have some whether people want them to or not, about 14 wins. So if you thought the Royals were indeed a 56-win team, my estimate in my brain got them to 70. If you thought they were a 60-win team, that got them to 74. If you thought they were a 64-win team, it got them to 78. If you thought maybe they're a little bit better, you're pushing 500. All of that is to say, I think the answer, and I'm not trying to crap on the Royals, they've done well this offseason. It's just too much ground to make up. So my answer, it's no. We'll go to Joel first. Do you think that this is enough for the Royals to win the AL Central?
No, I don't think it's enough to win the division, but I think it's enough to be competitive and frisky, which I think is all we want right now. That's kind of the next step, right? It's also the AL Central. Like, we would not be having this conversation if we were the AL West or in the AL East. This division is not good. The White Sox are going to be an abomination. They are going to be bad. Yeah. I do not think the Tigers are going to be able to take a major step forward. I think they'll be fine, but I don't think they're going to be that great. I don't know what Cleveland's going to be. They might trade Bieber and completely start over, but they draft and develop so well that it might not matter, and they're still going to be okay. The difference is, though, I guess, without Tito, Francona, how much does that change the math for Cleveland? And Minnesota is probably their division. But then again, we've seen the way that they've been up and down the last few years. I don't know. The winner of this division might win 87 games. Like, it's not going to be anything crazy. And you get hot at the right time, you might be able to be in contention. I don't think it's enough this year. We might be having a very different conversation in 2025, though.
Yeah.
What did Minnesota win it last year? That was
87.
87.
Yep.
Yeah. Like,
was right there.
It's not going to, it might not take much to win this division. You get hot at the right time, and things might, the math might change a little bit. I'm not trying to look through this through Royals blue colored glasses, but the division sucks. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm completely agree with you. I'm applauding for what they're doing. They're doing the exact right thing. I like the moves that they've made, but I think there's still plenty of ground to cover. And I think a lot of that's got to come internally. They got to have a lot of big steps forward from the guys within, and that's always been the plan. That the spinning that has happened does not change that. So that pressure is still there, but at least they have some veterans around them to help them polish those sides, get a little bit more on progress, and develop into the guys that they're supposed to be in order to take that step forward.
I put this second question in here. It kind of ties together with the first one, so I'm just going to assume that the answer is yes to that. The second was, is it enough to entice the front office to spend more in future off seasons? If things go as planned, that answer is obviously yes. Now, the first one, is it enough to convince outside free agents? And then Josh made a good point, / internal extension candidates to come to or want to stay in Kansas City. Josh, since you added that second part, what do you think?
I mean, absolutely. Walker mentioned in his press conference that, the moves that they've made along with the core that they have, that was a very enticing thing, as well as getting, the money obviously is what he's wanting as well. So he wanted the opportunity to see what the Royals can do with this year and his talents, and that makes a difference. And that's going to be the way it is for every free agent that's potentially here. So JJ is going to get on the phone with them, let them know what they have. And that's basically what they've been. And we talked about on Tuesday, but seeing Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino do the brick by brick emoji when the Lugo signings were, announced, that's when things started coming off. Like, that's going to be resounding to those guys. They're going to want to stay for those moves. They're going to see the commitment from the front office and see the coaches trying to, do their best to get these guys on track. I think all in all, that's definitely going to help the case, but at the end of the day, it's going to be about dollars and cents. So it's not going to hurt, but it's not going to be the end all be all either.
Joel?
It'll be interesting to see the win improvement.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go, they won 56 games last year. If with this kind of like dipping into the mid-tier free agent pool, they get to 72, that's what, a 16 win improvement. I wonder if the players and the front office go with that, like going into the mid-tier and you win 16 more games. What if we bump it up a little, like go into the top of the mid-tier or the bottom of like the top tier and go and keep spending a little bit more? Maybe we improve and we go from 72 to 82 or 84 and we're in contention for a wild card spot at the end of the year. Like, I think it can happen that fast. Now they win 67. That's still an 11-win improvement, which is substantial compared to where they were last year. They might just kind of stick where they're at. So I think it depends on how significantly these guys aid in the winning for this. Yeah. It's going to be pretty telling of how they do it.
And I think there's only two ways that the front office is really going to commit to spending in the future. One is you're trying to mention kind of the results that come from it, if they think that timing is right. And this offseason was the perfect time to spend. They knew exactly what they needed. They had payroll flexibility. They had the advantage of knowing their TV deals, which is a big deal apparently, and they need public support for that new stadium. So it was a perfect time to buy. They saw the opportunity and they seized it, which was incredibly encouraging. And the other way is if they have a new stadium. They want to build the entertainment year-round revenue-generating thing around this ballpark, like the Braves did, like the Cardinals did, like the Rangers did. All those teams have $150 million plus payrolls every year. So there is an actual recipe to this spending, and I think that they have a good plan to put that money back into the team, and that's what makes me more encouraged. If we don't get that new stadium going, I'm very curious to see what happens to their spending after that.
100%. Is it enough for everyone to learn that Matt Quatraro is indeed the man for the job? I think the jury is still out from like a baseball-wide perspective. Like outsiders, like, okay, who knows about this guy? But that's kind of, I've always had the philosophy with MLB managers. The bad ones can really screw things up. The good ones just kind of not stay out of the way, but you don't notice them quite as much. And they buy you a couple wins, they make some good tactical decisions. But like the impact, it's not like an NBA coach drawing up plays or an NFL coach that can single-handedly just absolutely screw you over multiple times in a season. You can technically do that with 162 games. Like you can say, okay, Q messed up X, Y, and Z games and made this bad decision, whatever. It's really about the players out there and the culture and the communication and the collaboration, all of that from previous members that were in that post have been different. And it seems like the players like him. So that was just a question I thought of. I think that the answer simultaneously, yes. And like, even if it isn't, this isn't going to be the reason why anyone finds out he isn't the man for the job, if that makes sense.
I agree. I'm with you there. I think he gets a full pass for the 2023 season. This is kind of the first year where I think he's really going to be evaluated, because he's going to have more input on who they picked up, what he could do with them, and kind of go from there. So I think this is kind of where the first time you're going to see that. Still going to need 2 to 3 years on top of that, in my opinion, to be able to get a good read on if Q is right for the job. But for now, I think he gets a pass for last year. I'm curious to see what happens if this kind of blows up in our faces. What happens with JJ Piccolo at that point? Because that's
going to look
really
wild,
where this is going to be different, and that's really then going to affect Q at that point.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I said previously. Like, it depends on how the win improvement. I think we have to see noticeable improvement in pretty much every capacity, and that goes to him as well, and some of the decision making on his part when it comes to roster construction, lineup construction, and bullpen decisions. And if we see noticeable improvement there, then hey, maybe he really is the right guy, and last year was just a perfect storm of shit, to be honest. Like, that's really what it turned into. And if, like I said, the Royals go out and they win 72 games this year, and they go from 56 to 72, and we look like we're trending in the right direction, then hey, let's roll it back with Matt Cotrero in 2025 and go from there.
We're going to debut something here. I'm not promising it's going to stick around or how often it's going to be. I personally have extremely high hopes for it. My dear pal Josh Keiser proposed it for this very podcast. We're going to start Pump the Brakes. And
put a little feeling into it. Pump
the brakes.
Brakes.
We're not intending to roast people. We're not calling anyone dumb. We're not saying it's a terrible take. Like, we're not bashing anyone specific, any, group. We're just saying, I caught this take on this website or this program or this radio station, whatever, that little interesting. I'm like, okay, let's put it on the radar, but let's pump the brakes a little bit. The car is several hundred feet ahead of us, but we're going 65, 70 in a 40. Let's pump the brakes, slow down a little bit, and then get a better view of what we have. And the one that I had, we'll just blow through mine real quick. Anthony Recker on MLB Network, we've already kind of talked about this. His quote, "If I had to pick an AL Central winner, the Royals would be right there. I think they would be the team I'd go with." Now, Anthony, I like your enthusiasm, but Josh, would you like to do the honors?
Pump those brakes.
Let's calm the heck down. Like, Minnesota is still going to be respectable. They did lose some pitching. They are perhaps shedding payroll, but I think they're still going to be perhaps the favorites, and rightfully so. I'm a little bit higher on Detroit this year. Like, I think they could make a leap and compete for the division potentially. I don't know if they're going to actually do it. I think they are right now where the Royals are going to be at the end of this season, if that makes sense. Maybe they're a little bit better in terms of their outlook. Cleveland, shrug. Like, they're going to be not terrible, but also not great. They didn't have a good year last year. Chicago is just a dumpster fire. So if you're ranking the top 5 teams out of 5 in the AL Central, the Royals aren't 1. I don't think they're 2. I don't think they're 5. So then you're at 3, 4, and that's kind of where people thought they'd be coming into last year. Let's pump the brakes on it. I don't think they're going to win the AL Central. Now, when he says the Royals would be quote unquote right there, if right there is like within 10 games, then maybe we're talking, but I'd pump those brakes. Which one of you wants to go bring yours up?
So I guess I'll go with this one here. People talking about the Seth Lugo signing and not liking it. Pump those brakes. Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
But we need more than that, Joel. You have bad energy.
I don't.
Actually, that was dead energy.
That was about as much energy as I could possibly give. Josh knows, and any other person with a 1-week-old child knows. Yeah. I like the move, and it's similar to when I talked about Michael Walker earlier. It raises the floor of this rotation, and I understand the people that are skeptical because he's 34 years old. The Royals gave him a 3-year deal. If he had been a starter for the entirety of his career to this point, sure, Like, I'm totally willing to listen to the argument of it being a concern, but he was a reliever for the significant part of his career. And really last year was the first year he had started a bunch of games for any team. He started 18 games in 2017 for the Mets. But other than that, for the most part, it was out of the bullpen. And then last year started 26 games through 146 in the third innings for the Padres. Total innings for his career to this point is 641, and he's been in the league for 8 years. Like, there is still a ton of tread on those tires relative to his age. So I don't think it's as big of a concern for me. He has a full year. If the Royals' plan was we were going to make this reliever at 34 years old a starter now, if he didn't start last year, I understand those concerns, but I thought he was a solid starter for the Padres last year. He's going to a ballpark that's going to continue to benefit him being a pitcher's park. I think it's going to end up working out just fine for the Royals in that regard. So I think this is a good move for them moving forward. And they're not coming in asking him to be their ace. I think he's probably their 2 or their 3. And if that's what they're going to get out of him, then I think it's perfectly fine for $15 million a year. That's pretty cheap for a solid starting pitcher.
I agree.
Agreed. Speaking of Jordan, shout out. Speaking of
let's go
good deal, cheap deal. I saw plenty of takes around the internet saying that Hunter Renfroe was a definitive upgrade over Edward Olivares. One, bump those brakes, guys. 2, Renfroe is not a definitive, in my opinion, upgrade over Olivares. I think their projections, both in the Fangraphs depth chart projections as well as the Steamer, both have Renfroe at a 0.8, 0.7 projection in F4. Olivares is 0.5, 0.4. That difference is negligible. And you can maybe convince me that Renfroe has a higher ceiling than Olivares because of the power, because of what he's able to do. I can absolutely get on board with that. But a definitive upgrade when he's coming off a worse season in more plate appearances than Edward Olivares and also costs $11 million more over the next 2 seasons than Edward Olivares would have cost, then I don't think that's a definitive thing. I think that he can be. The ceiling's there, but I just don't. I'm not buying that it's a definitive upgrade yet. Go show me that you are that, Mr. Renfroe, and then I'll eat this tweet, or I don't know what the audio equivalent of that is, but I will eat the crow on that, and we'll just see how it plays out. But to be able to, you got to pump those brakes, baby.
I disagree. I think he is going to be an upgrade.
Okay, like it. Just give me some contention. Let's go.
I don't have much stats to back it up at this point. I just watched enough Edward Olivares where I'm like, I've got it right around.
It's more about the guy that left than the guy that came in. Okay.
100%. And I'm not trying to slander. Like, Oli had his moments, but it's just
So
do you really think that he is that definitively better in the field?
No. The arm, people misconstrue arm with total defensive.
No, like I'm not saying like I still think he's passable. Like, and that's something that Edward Olivares was never in the field.
It's not.
Yes.
That's not.
In
if
the
he can be
absolute
a passable fielder and hit for a 110 to 115 weighted runs created plus, I think we're going to be just fine.
Okay.
If that Edward Olivares will not be that.
Sure. I respect that. And the least surprising development of 2023 as it winds down, I'm sitting on the fence with this one. I don't know. I think he's going to be a little bit better than he was last year, and that technically is an upgrade over Edward Olivares, but he is not going to be 2021 or 2 Hunter Renfroe. So somewhere meet in the middle. That's my thought. Any final observations before we get out of here?
I have one quick one. Over-under wins. Royals are 72.
Christ.
Minnesota's at 85.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit 79. Cleveland 75. Chicago at 64, which is hilarious. But if you are on this train that the Royals could compete and win that Central, you can get them at plus 1,700 odds right now. So if you really want to go after that goal, put it down, because that value is only going to get worse whenever they go. I don't know, trade from Aaron Judge.
We will be back whenever that happens. So we thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I thank my dear pals for jumping on with me, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.